Welcome to Buying Sandlot. I'm Kyle Pagan, along with Kyle Scott. We've got a great episode for you today as everyone in the youth sports industry is reacting to the Savannah Banana news. And a YouTube mini-doc highlighting the professionalization of youth sports is making waves throughout the industry. But before we get into the show, tickets for our youth sports business conference in Philadelphia on April 14th and 15th are still available. You can get those over at buyingsandlot.com or the link in this show's description, because we've got an amazing set of speakers you won't want to miss. We actually just announced 10 more on Friday from Rush Soccer League Apps, a former MLB player, and more. Great lineup over there. You're working hard.
Lineups, it turns out putting on an event is a lot of work. Who would have known?
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the buy-in's been great. I don't think I've really had a conversation with anybody who's been like, no, we don't want to come, right? So that's good. I mean, honestly, at this point, it's just a matter of triaging emails and conversations. So I expect that we'll announce a lot more speakers in the coming weeks and throughout February. I would like to have all the speakers out by the end of February, and at some point in the next couple of weeks, put out the topics and panels, which are coming together nicely. I was getting on calls with people saying like, all right, I'm in my roster construction phase here, right? Who can we get to come, right? And some of the topics are obvious, some are not. So it's now that we got the roster, now we got to put people in their different positions on the field, to strain the sports analogy. But it's going really well. We have more people coming. Early bird tickets are done, right? So ticket prices increased. We weren't BSing on that, right? Some people took advantage. It actually lingered a little bit into Sunday, and a couple people bought early Sunday, so they snagged it. I had to manually make the changeover. But ticket price increased $50, and they will increase probably another $50 in about 2 or 3 weeks, and it'll keep walking up until we eventually end up at $7.99. So they're $6.49 right now. So I would still grab them. I wouldn't wait till the last minute, because last minute prices will be more expensive. Yeah. And if you get a VIP ticket now, there's only a certain number we're pretty much out of hotel rooms at the location. There's only 40, most are gone. And then we're holding a few back for, partners, friends of the show, so to speak. And we'll have another nearby hotel room block or two with discounted rates. There's a limited number of those. So if you get a VIP ticket now, you will get first access to those. So a lot going on. Lots of good speakers. Lots more on the way.
Get them while they're hot. Do you think your days of a Quizzo master? Do you think this has helped you put on events better?
Hosting a Quizzo at Drinker's Pub in your 20s does not prepare you for putting on a business conference, it turns out. It's going well. It's going well. Yeah. The biggest thing now is, honestly, anyone listening to this, is panel moderation, right? I'll do some. I think you'll be up to speed enough, Kyle, to handle a couple of panels, right? But we would like some outsiders doing some. I'd be happy to not be on a stage for 2 full days. In fact, I may just go lock myself in a room after a few hours of small talk. So if anyone wants to moderate and feels like they have the chops or has a journalism background, hit me up. We'll have a conversation at least.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's get into it. Everyone has opinions on the Savannah Bananas, announcing they're getting into their next frontier. It is youth sports. Former CEO of Cooperstown All-Star Village, Rick Abbott, said this could be an amazing juggernaut depending on the direction they go. If Jesse decided, for lack of a better term, to take on the Cooperstowns or the Dreams Parks or the Perfect Games and different things and do a youth baseball location, have them play baseball and sprinkle in the fun of banana ball and all of these other things that go along with it, I think he's sitting on a gold mine. And then we had in the newsletter today a link to Tyler Gillum, who's the head coach of the Savannah Bananas. He was on a podcast earlier in the year where he was asked, what's the biggest issue facing youth sports? He stressed these things, kind of like, how do we get more kids playing baseball or banana ball? And I think he gave a subtle wink to the guy who was interviewing him. How do we get them to stay in the game longer? How do we develop them over a long period of time to be the best versions of themselves? And what he did, he mentioned the cost of youth sports feels like one of the major issues to achieving these 3 goals. So how do you think they find a middle ground here, Banana Ball, to make all of this accessible to people, as well as getting people to sign up for their goal of 1 million participants?
Yeah, and it's a good question. Everyone's got a different opinion on it, right? And they sort of are all over the place. I like James's take in the newsletter, which is, hey, you got this big brand. Can they partner with kind of the grassroots and local organizations, a la Babe Ruth or Ripken or Little League, and basically just play a only slightly modified version of regular baseball, more drip, more music, more fun, and then turn it all into a Banana World Series that would, I presumably, be broadcast in lots of places. Like, that feels like it could work. There's a number of different ways they can go with this. And I know we talked about this last week, and we've covered it now twice in the newsletter. And I don't know, maybe we're overdoing it on the banana ball thing, but I think it really does represent, and it's probably not the only brand out there, although not that I have another one on the tip of my tongue, but it's one of those brands that could very easily get scale in youth sports and that is loved by kids. And it's just well positioned to do it. And I think they would probably come at it in the right way. That's, sort of fun and more wholesome than a lot of the things you're seeing out there. So like it just represents a really interesting dynamic that may come into youth baseball. And if it works for them and they figure something out, then you're going to have other sports think about how to replicate this sort of fun, like if you're turning dials from competitiveness to fun, right? And I think a lot of people would argue right now, if you have two dials, like the competitive dials up to like 90 and the fun, sometimes goes between 10 and 90, but maybe often closer to 10 for some kids over time. Maybe like, how do you bring those more into balance or turn the fun dial higher? That's probably what the Bananas will lead in, setting aside whatever the model is. But if that works, then you have a recipe for other sports. So it's it represents an interesting, like, black swan event for the industry.
Yeah, I thought James's take was kind of spot on. I thought partnering with those Babe Ruths and those Cal Rickens would be. I don't see them doing complexes. I think that's kind of when you get into a price model that might not be affordable for people. And this is what I think, like Jesse in his statement in Savannah Bananas, they've been true to form of being like, we want to make it more affordable for youth athletes to play baseball. I mean, baseball is down between the ages of 7 to 11. They've seen it since the pandemic and whatnot. So it's like the one thing that I think, if I had to speculate a little bit, I could see them kind of maybe not doing the Babe Ruth or the Cal Ripken model, but leasing kind of their name, the fun, the equipment, the apparel to like your township models. If your township models are kind of are looking for that, hey, you can do travel ball, you could do little league ball, and then hey, listen, here's some banana ball as well, and it's kind of just a one size fits all kind of model there.
Somewhere the RCX sports offices run around like Michael Scott in The Office with their hair. Yeah, it's happening. I was actually about to say the RCX thing, which after reading James's take feels like it makes a lot of sense, which is, licensing. They work with a lot of the leagues, obviously NFL flag, and licensing the name and the brand and the equipment, and then outsourcing the actual operations generally to people that are more on the ground. There's also a franchise model with like an I-9 or a Youth Athletes United sort of thing, where it's like you have people operating at a local level, and then they can those franchisees could get access somehow to the Bananas license. But I suspect, and I think that would work, and that's the most obvious way to do this. I don't think the Bananas I don't think that guy wants to do anything obvious. And I think they want to be, if you listen to him, he said, we don't want to just scale this and have other people in charge of our brand, which, is kind of what RCX does, right? I don't know how much involvement NFL and the NHL for Street really have into the programming. It's more about just licensing the name and, making sure as everything is like, kosher, but like not truly influencing the way it's operated. I think the Bananas really want to have like their hands in how this thing is operated. And I don't think just the licensing model works for that. Maybe they have a boot camp where they bring operators in or league owners in, and it's like, this is the way we do it. And now you're talking about like a franchise model, but like they have to, I imagine there will be very strict standards for whatever banana ball for youth kids looks like. You can't just buy that logo and they're too brand conscious for that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the training would have to be just as important as putting on the leagues itself and adding the jerseys, the apparel, all the rules and the fun and entertainment and stuff. Do you think they go full banana ball? Because in my opinion, I don't think full banana ball will work. I think there will be too much pushback from parents, from baseball guys, quote unquote. I think they have to make it fun, and I'm trying to go back to like when I was a kid. Like being announced was awesome, having music or walk up music was awesome and stuff. I think you still have to play within the confines of baseball, so that when these kids kind of grow out of this 7 to 11, 12 age range, and they're like, okay, I like baseball, I want to get serious about baseball, they still have kind of that baseball pedigree. Or maybe I'm just contradicting myself with this statement and saying like, hey, maybe this is for people who don't, and we'll talk about this a lot later, who don't have professional Major League Baseball aspirations, and this would be just fine for 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I did a piece on Potsdam Scout last spring, right after we launched, the creator-led travel team, and I think they actually had some guest coaching appearances from it was Coach Rack or somebody else from the Bananas. Actually, was in some of their videos. These guys show up to perfect game tournaments and like generally perform really well. They're pulling some of the best teenage players from around the country to play for their team. They're dripping them out in swag. And then during their workouts where they're creating content leading up to the tournament, they're doing trick plays, right? They're not doing them in the games. They're there to win the games, but they're having some fun for the purposes of creating content. So like, I don't know if it's always like mutually exclusive. Obviously, if you're a shortstop and trying to catch a ball behind your back and trying to win a game, like those things could definitely be at odds sometimes. You could probably accomplish enough banana ball by just bringing in some of the rules, whether it's time limits, spectators catching a foul ball, I think would be imagine how much fun that would be going to your kid's baseball game. If you know how many kids would be hanging around the backstop and dads, right? That would be cool. No one I think people would generally like that. There's a couple of other banana ball rules that you can apply.
You don't think it would start any fights between the parents?
We definitely starts. Maybe they need like special foul ball catching zones by team. It's like the European soccer teams. Like you have to separate the fans. You have to separate the away fans. The home and away parents got to be separated. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's enough you could do there, and these kids are still getting better at baseball. And again, baseball guys would hate it, but I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And you're right, by the way, walk-up music, highlights, jerseys, like most kids just want that. And I keep going back to like professionalized rec, but like, again, 0.001% of kids are going pro. Maybe 1% will play in college. Maybe half that percent will make money in college. Like it's not a lot of kids. It's okay to like just give an experience. The kid could stink, right? But he's going to get just as much joy, if not more, out of getting his name announced, having walk-up music, having a cool jersey. And there's nothing wrong with that because at age 11, that may compel the kid who stinks to keep playing if he's in a league that's all about fun, right? And now you're like, you go back to what I wrote today, and we'll get to this in a second, but like the alternative is he quits sports and he plays video games in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So like, let's keep him on the field and, let's have fun for the 11-year-old C team. They can have just as much fun as the A team.
Yeah, but that's a rational, level-headed take that I think you might have, but a lot of parents don't have. And like you said, we'll talk about Joon Lee's YouTube piece in a little bit, and that was like my one thing. Let's just get into it now. That was my one thing that I like took away from it, where it was like, and maybe my generation, the older millennials, you being a parent now of two young boys, like maybe you guys growing up with the internet and growing up with these apps and understanding the goods and bads of professionalization and specialization and everything, maybe you guys are kind of the ones that take that on. And then I'm watching a Bloomberg piece yesterday or today, and there's a family selling their house for an RV so they can drive their kid 3.5 hours around to a baseball tournament. And I'm just like, I mean, good on you to provide experiences for your kid. I appreciate that as much as the next guy. But like, the chances, unfortunately, like you just said, you went over the data of him making it to the league is very, very, very small. So.
Yeah, again, I try to be, I think I'm more balanced on this, and I'm coming at it from the business perspective here, right? We're talking to people in the industry, but like, all right, the way this thing is now being covered outwardly and presented to parents, I said it, we've reached a tipping point now where there is enough coverage and enough awareness and enough firsthand experience of the costs and pressures associated with youth sports that like it will at some point come back to bite at least certain pockets of the industry if things don't change, coverage doesn't change, experiences don't change or evolve as money comes into the space, right? Again, why I'm leaning on the rec side. Like parents, if it's a positive, fun experience for kids, parents are willing to pay for that. So there's that side of it. Yeah, but on the Bloomberg piece and the family selling their trailer, I mean, you could definitely find these, you could cherry pick these anecdotes that most people would think seem deranged, right? But the reality is there are people in our audience who train these kids and are parents of these kids. There are kids who do go pro, right? Like this isn't like we act like it's hard and it's a long shot. And I think generally the industry capitalizes on more parents than there should be thinking their kid has a shot. And that's where the problems generally lie on like the societal level. But there are lots of kids who will go pro and become successful, famous, wealthy athletes and or play in college, right? If you go to college now, you make $500,000 as a the third option on Maryland's basketball team, like, and you get a free education. Like this is really good for the family. It's good for the kid. You start out with a little actual money coming out of college, right? You have a surplus instead of a deficit coming out of college, plus the experience and the health benefits. So like I think the media's view of this is always, well, this is terrible for kids because most kids aren't going to go pro. True. But like there should probably be more stories on second grade parents that are trying to prepare their kids for Princeton because their acceptance rates, while they're not as low as professional athletes, like they're very low acceptance rates at those schools. And how much money, I don't think we ever go around and cover or talk about as much how bad the academic pressures that are placed on kids are relative to the sports pressures. There's good and bad in both of those because if you do go to Harvard and become a lawyer out of Harvard or a scientist out of MIT, like that's what parents want for their kids. And like, so it's okay to pursue those things.
There's no NIL for lawyers either. So you're coming with a deficit right away.
That's right.
You get a scholarship or whatnot, or your parents are paying for school. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you are. Yeah. You're right. You're getting a 6-figure salary if it works, but I hear you. Yeah. So I think just with all things, it's about bringing balance to the force. Right. But it's okay if a kid's really good and actually has prospects, then by all means, go for it. Like we celebrate athletes in society and we should. But again, it's just, I think the balance is out of whack. And then that's what the media really keys on. It's the cost and the balance. And that's where things get a little murky. Most parents are just happy for their kids to go be active and not be sitting behind a computer, which we can get to, or a phone.
Yeah, 100. I mean, 100%. Like, I agree. Going back to your point about cherry picking, I just feel like the media, and we see it with everything. We see it with youth sports. We see it with the academic pressures. We see it with professional sports and everything. I always think like when we see a piece like Joon Lee did, he's an independent reporter, did a mini YouTube piece. We were talking about it off camera, and it was a good piece, but a little bit biased, I would say. Like, I mean, you have your faceless supervillain, private equity, which the Wall Street Journal will cherry pick off of that. The New York Times will cherry pick off of that and stuff.
Love the faceless supervillain. It's good.
Yeah. I think of it kind of like Black Bear Sports Group, who has sponsored the newsletter in the past. I mean, they took over the operations for an ice rink that was going out of business because of their refrigeration system, and they built that thing back up to now reopened it, and now kids in Kalamazoo, Michigan can go play, or other firms. Like I personally went to Cal Ripken before. It's one of the greatest memories I've ever had in my youth sports my youth sports career. And like I still have memories of playing at that Fenway location and stuff that they have down there. And they've they've gotten capital from some private equity groups to modernize more amazing venues. Then you have capital for tech platforms like TeamSnap, who are private equity owned and stuff, and Playmetrics, and like they help make parents' lives easier than having to text 15 different people who you don't know in a group chat, and it's just all over the place, or coaches having to do 100 different things. Like it just makes it more easier to do. So it's like again, it just goes back to that. Even though it was a good doc and I did like it, I just think it's very easy to cherry pick this sort of stuff. And June talked to two parents who definitely felt like they spent way too much on youth sports. But you also have to think of the latter of being like, maybe you could pull back, but you're also creating lifelong experiences for your child. You're making sacrifices for your child. And I feel like that's an everyday kind of thing that people do, no matter if they're playing youth sports, no matter if they're doing academics, no matter if they're going to gymnastics camp or summer camp or acting camp or something like that. Like things cost money, sacrifices are made. I think that's 99% of parents have had those experiences.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. It's like I look at it too as to what the alternative is, right? Like, and I wrote this today. We're all coming to realize in society how bad phones and screen time is, and like the stats on like they're all bad. The amount of time kids are spending on social media, playing video games, are less bad, but like just loneliness, right? Like just check every like negative thing that like especially teen males could have, and teen girls that more impacted by like what they see on Instagram and depression and things like that. The numbers are horrible, right? And like, yeah, like some of the pressure and cost to it's like table stakes. There's a difference between voluntary costs, like parents paying $5,000 to play in this tournament because it's cool. Fine, if they could do it, who cares, right? Some parents pay for outrageous vacations, nobody gets mad, right? I think where the media is pulling on the thread is that it's like table stakes, that if you even want to attempt to keep up, you have to pay for the trainer, you have to pay to play in this tournament and for this travel team. And that's where the press begins to unravel. But the industry really could use a publicist to, I don't want to say push back on this stuff, it's all accurate, but like, again, bring balance to the force here. If those kids aren't playing sports, what other things would they be doing now with this free time? Chances are it involves screen time, which is worse physically, worse mentally. I mean, just lots of negative things. So we have to be realistic about the state of the world. These kids aren't going to go hang out at the mall and go to the movies like kids used to do in the 80s and 90s. And, so bad things happen there too, right? Like bad habits get picked up from hanging out on corners, right? But the alternative is, okay, well, maybe it's another extracurricular, fine. Maybe that's an instrument, and there are parents who push their kids in other extracurriculars. It's not just sports. But if they're not doing it, chances are it's screen time. And like, if we're realistic about the alternative, it's like, okay, would you rather parents be spending a little bit more and kids maybe feeling a little bit more athletic pressure, or sitting at home on Instagram and Snapchat? What's worse is the answer. And, there's lots of physical health benefits, obviously, from playing sports. And there's generally more mental health positives from playing sports, with the exception being, kids that are pushed to the point where the pressure is too great. But that happens in academics too. So I think the industry really needs to think about how can it counter these narratives a little bit, or at least add some context. And then, to your point, talk about some of the good money does. And I'm sure this is out of the private equity, faceless supervillain PR playbook 101. But it's like, there are actually some good things that come out of it, right? There's old rusty fields where you better have your tetanus shot, right? Like, money coming into the space standardizes some of this stuff, which largely can be good. I did a parent-led local volunteer 7-year-old basketball coaching yesterday. It was our first time because the first 2 games were snowed out. I was the only coach of 11 kids. It's all volunteer-led league. There's no official. We do 30 minutes of training before the game. So I actually used team snaps drills to run it with the kids. But honestly, it was kind of chaotic. We got out there. I am the coach. I'm making the substitutions. I'm refereeing the game because at that level, we don't have a referee, while trying to learn all the kids' names and balance the fact that most of these kids don't know how to dribble a ball, but not call traveling every 10 seconds, right? You're doing it all. And I'm like, this isn't a great experience for the kids. Everyone here's doing their best. I think the kids had fun, but like, if this was a private, better run thing right now, maybe it would be, and there was more structure, maybe there would be a little bit more benefit to some of these kids who are playing, even the ones who aren't good. So there are some positives for money and structure. Never mind, people are now thinking a lot about compliance, right? The local dad has to pass a background check, right? Anywhere really now, especially if you're with clubs. That wasn't always the case. Technology has helped with that. Cheating, Zorts, we've talked to them about like age-based cheating. There's that. And then you got guys like Andy at Go For that are trying to have an athletic trainer at every field, also a positive. So like the CYA aspect of money being involved, I think actually has some health and safety benefits to the kids. So like, again, it's not always all good, but it's also not always all bad.
Yeah, man, I think we just became the unequivocal PR mouthpiece for the private equity people until
Might
they get one.
Well, Sandlot Partners here. We'll rep the industry, right? We can't do lobbying. I don't know well how much that sausage is made, but I know my way around the media. Well,
you don't want to talk for 8 hours anyway, 12 hours. You don't want to filibuster for that long.
Yeah, that's it. We'll be the PR firm for the industry. I think we just maybe become the de facto one if we do this long enough.
No, I mean, I think it's all fair, and I think a lot of things you get arguments and everything. It's a lot of times it meets in the middle. Like, it's not ever one side fits all. Whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's entertainment, rumors, galore. It's like what I've learned in being in sports for the last 4 or 5 years is sometimes it all meets in the middle, and it's typically that's where you'll find your answer. It's just not juicy enough. And again, the piece that Joon did, shout out to him. That was a great job, great research piece, very well edited and put together. I just think like we just mapped out. There are goods and there are bads, like there are in a lot of different things in this world. And when it comes to takes.
It's just it's all about how the industry markets itself. Maybe I've been watching too much Emily in Paris, but she's so good at that. Yeah. She's so good at that for the brands. Just finding that little we're binge watching that now.
I'm watching Mad Men, so I guess I'm kind of in the marketing space too.
It's like the 2.0 Mad Men. It's very good. Last one. So it is. It's like Mad Men for women, except I'm loving it. And your wife will watch it with you. Mad Men.
My wife has already she's already crushed it. I've already lost the boat on that, dude. Mad Men for women, like you should trademark that before you get off this episode.
Maybe I will. Netflix. There we go. See, look at all the PR work we're doing right now. Let me. Speaking of PR work, let me read this one real quick. So I know we got to go in a sec here, but we covered this in the newsletter today. Perfect Game gets the big gun. So the trio of big name comedians: Nikki Glaser, Tiffany Haddish, Jay Leno. Haddish and Jay Leno headlined a fundraiser for Perfect Game Believe in Baseball Foundation last night at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, right? emceed by Joe Davis, Trevor Hoffman, who's heavily involved with PGA. I think James spoke to him last year, was there. So I say this, it's their charitable endeavor. Foundation raises money to offset youth sports costs for elementary and high school age kids. So doing some good here. But I do find a sign, we've talked about Perfect Game really leaning into brand, right? Versus tournaments. That headline, Nikki Glaser.
She just hosted the Golden Globes. They got the woman who hosted the Golden Globes. Like
Tiffany Haddish, and Jay Leno at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood. Like that is a Mad Lib I didn't expect in under the Perfect Game umbrella. So like, if you want to take a sign that they're leaning in the brand, like going to comedy clubs with celebrities in Hollywood is a real good sign of where Perfect Game is leaning. The local tournament operator's not doing that. They're thinking bigger now. They're thinking brand.
Yeah.
They could use the what is it? The Mad Men for women. The Mad Men for youth sports. You'd be the Mad Men for youth sports.
We'll see it this week with the Super Bowl. I mean, we talked about it already. San Francisco, they're hosting a litany from San Jose to San Francisco. They're hosting a litany of flag football events. So yeah. Well, shout out to Team Snap for saving you some time with some drills and stuff that you could teach the youngsters.
The Sharks and Minnows drill is good. And Sleeping Giant drill. I ran it. I actually paid for the Team Snap subscription yesterday. I got to see if I can get that for free. I got to see if I can pull like one card here, not have to pay. But it helped. It worked. Sure enough. Look at that.
They doing the 3-man weave yet?
No, we're working on the one-hand dribble.
Okay. All right. Baby steps. Yeah. But hey, listen, you got anything else before we get out of here?
That's it.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody who tuned into the show. Give us a subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give us a rating if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back again this week talking about all the youth sports news and the business of the youth sports. So we'll talk to you then. Have a good one.